Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Peggy Noonan in the Wall Street Journal writing about the mayoral primary election in New York City this past Tuesday. New York Democrats take a stab at reality. And as you talked about, the dynamic in New York City, sort of interesting because it's sort of the same dynamic in Chicago and really Illinois generally, since there's no Republican Party in either state, effectively. Especially Illinois, even more so than New York. And it's old-time Democrat machine politicians versus Marxists. That's your choice. Adams representing the former and his main opponents, like the AOC-backed candidate Willie representing the latter. Noonan picked up on something from Adams' election night speech. How dare those with their philosophical and intellectual theorizing and their classroom mindset talking about the theory of policing. You don't know this. I know this. I'm going to keep my city safe. That was the Adams candidacy and really the primary on the, generally speaking, but where the victor will come from ultimately, and that's on the Democrat socialist side.
You don't think Curtis Sliwa has a chance?
I don't think so. I hate to break it to you. But it was a referendum on crime. And the only thing that people cared about with respect to Eric Adams, he was on the New York City Police Department for 2 decades.
Yeah, but what kind of cop was he when he was on the police department? Because I was listening to Sean Hannity yesterday, and they said, his best friend is Al Sharpton. I worked with him on the force. And
yeah, I know. He's pivoted. He was, for example, talking about critical race theory in the beginning, positively, of his candidacy, and then switched midway through as he saw where the market opportunity was. So again, this is nobody's falling in love with Eric Adams, but understand the choice. You have a choice between someone like Eric Adams and an extension of Warren Wilhelm, a.k.a. Bill de Blasio. So that's your choice. The other thing that she said about Adams, not that I necessarily that this is genuine, because I don't take anything at face value with these people. I'm talking about politicians. But he was on the street, so it could be. She writes, here's something I think helped Adams. What is always missing from the public discourse on crime is simple compassion. It's weirdly absent. Being the victim of a violent crime can change a life and bring untold long-term woe, real physical and psychological repercussions, and she suggests that Eric Adams spoke to that. And I think that's fair, and we've talked about it with analysts like Rafael Mangual over at Manhattan Institute. And we just talk about it here because it's just commonsensical. We just talk about shootings, 3,000 people shot, 300 people, and then that would be a low number, murdered in Chicago. And we just talk about them like they're statistics. But you understand the ripple effect of being shot. That is a catastrophic injury if you survive. Or being murdered. That is a catastrophic event, not just for the victim, but for the entire circle around that victim. And it is, we do sort of move in the direction of dehumanization. It's just another carjacking. It's just another murder. It's just another shooting. It's just one more to add to the stat columns. And Eric Adams humanized that effectively, humanized the victims effectively as part of his candidacy. For more on all this, we're pleased to be joined again by Chadwick Moore, contributing editor for The Spectator. Chadwick, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning. Glad to be here.
Good morning. And so Eric Adams' apparent victory, and I know some people think that Willie will end up will end up winning when all the votes are tallied, but he looks to be in a pretty strong position. And really just what you see going on around the country, that rapid response force in Portland that resigned and so forth, and Joe Biden coming out this week to talk about crime, Dem socialists doing a real pivot on violent crime as it is spiking in major cities across America, even over the spike that happened last year.
Right, exactly. And I think you're right that this election was a referendum on crime here in New York because New Yorkers are just finally fed up that they aren't going to take this anymore. But what interesting timing. Why now? I mean, we forget that our major cities, especially here in New York and particularly, cities on the West Coast, it wasn't just coronavirus and the George Floyd riots that when they started to decline. They've been on the decline for several years now under these far left progressive mayors. Here in New York, vagrancy and homelessness has been up for many, many years. Crime has been slowly creeping up. Of course, last year it just skyrocketed up, especially with all the defund the police rhetoric. And, it's almost like it's like you see this with the Democrat Party and with these totalitarians in general it's create a problem like they did with crime with this rhetoric from the very top of the party about defunding the police and letting rioters out of jail. Create a problem, prolong the suffering, and then come in with the solution. So you're once again this hero and hoping that people have the memories of Goldfish and won't remember that this is something that you, as a Democrat, as the Democrat Party, created and allowed to fester, intentionally putting people in these situations and keeping your cities and your districts in a miserable, dangerous place.
And so, I mean, what's your prognosis on Eric Adams? Is he going to make overtures to the I keep saying Wileys of the world and the other Marxist candidates in the race and try and pull it all together? Or is he going to be somebody that tries to follow more the Giuliani-Bloomberg approach, at least as it pertains to crime?
I'd like to hope he does that with the Giuliani-Bloomberg approach, but I don't think he will. It's sort of like I had this feeling that maybe he might be kind of this Obama-like figure who, while campaigning, seemed very rational, very moderate, tried to reach out to both sides, tried to speak to normal people, what they want, and then comes in and is just a total communist and surprised many people because he seemed so different on the campaign trail. I don't think that if Adams is the nominee, we're going to see this Marxism, the social justice stuff, this Wiley de Blasio approach while he's campaigning. But once he's in office, and we're assuming that whoever the Democrat is will win, who knows? And you're right to mention that he's got some alliances with Al Sharpton and people like that. So it's anyone's guess, really. He's not. He was a Brooklyn Borough president before, and I don't think he was particularly vocal in the news much when he was in that role. So we don't really know a ton about what's going on underneath the surface. He has, made overtures to critical race theory before in the past and things like that.
And what about Andrew Yang? Where is he going to move, and what's he going to run for next?
Yeah.
Because he was a contender at one point in time.
And also, is he ever going to put on a tie, or is he just too cool for that?
It's a millennial.
He's just way too cool. Yeah, hopefully, I'm so happy Andrew Yang didn't win. The man knew nothing about New York. He was just basically a tourist. And, of course, all these journalists who are also basically just tourists loved him. He reminded them of some of their roommates with in college or what have you. I don't know what he'll be up here. Maybe he'll start learning how to give directions. Maybe he'll start learning what a bodega is. Maybe he'll start learning how to pronounce Houston Street. Maybe he'll start trying to, figure out this city that he tried to run and failed at.
I went to Skidmore. I know everything there is to know about New York City, right? That sort of attitude. I love that characterization. That's very good. Did you have time, because I didn't catch it, the Skittles, the candy company, they did a live Q&A for LGBTQ plus rights for Pride Month. And I didn't catch Skittles' take on LGBTQ and Pride Month. I don't know if you caught it, because I mean, it's important to know what Skittles is thinking.
Well, rainbow colors like the flag.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's why I'm sure they did it.
Why do they have to? They already have the rainbow year round. I don't get it. I mean, they introduced the new colors of the Pride flag in their Skittles packet for this year, like the black and the brown and the pink and the blue.
Well, I mean, this is probably the most important example of corporate leadership since Starbucks baristas were tasked with curing racial discord, which they effectively achieved, as we know.
That's right. And Skittles works every day with the Taste the Rainbow campaign to make sure we have LGBT equality. I'm not sure if they're selling Skittles in the Middle East and if they've had to change their packaging for that. Maybe looking in the opposite direction as corporations usually do. But this corporate pandering we see everywhere it's so funny because you even see gay people are just so fed up with it, and even left-wing gay people are like, just over the corporate pandering and marketing of Pride Month.
Well, I mean, but to be fair, I mean, doesn't the gay community, the LGBTQ plus community, I mean, how often do you hear this, Chadwick? Where would we be without Skittles?
a few trips to the dentist, I would imagine, is where we would be.
Right, yeah, right.
All right, so Chadwick Moore, you're in New York City. Are people still wearing masks everywhere?
Oh, my goodness. Everywhere outside. I mean, it's progress if I see two people on the street who don't have a mask on, like the other day. And I'm like, wow, I guess things are changing a little bit. There's still the masks everywhere, on the subway, outside. I don't get it. The other day I walked into a store and they asked me to wear a mask, and I said, no thanks, I'll go somewhere else. So there are businesses that actually aren't doing the mask thing. Bizarrely, it's people outside where you see it the most. I don't understand it. You can go into businesses and some people won't be wearing the mask. It's very bizarre. I don't know why they don't want to give it up. I don't know if they just it aids in, I don't know, New Yorkers like feeling anonymous. Maybe I don't know what's going on, but it's freakish. It's almost like a fetish at this point. They're really resisting getting rid of this disgusting floppy piece of cloth that they slap on their face and then out of their pockets all day long. I don't get it. It's really strange. It makes me feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone and that I don't know these people at all.
Don't come to Chicago because we've got some of the same ones.
Here's an interesting study just out. This is by Department of Psychology and Brain Sciences researchers at UCSB, University of California, Santa Barbara. And I haven't had time to look at the methodology of the study, but it produces a result that's reflected in reality, so I'm going to accept it for the purposes of this discussion. They looked at the dehumanization that occurs by partisans in politics and how it erodes democratic norms, and they specifically looked at the 2020 presidential election. Here's one of the findings of the study. Despite the socially progressive and egalitarian outlook traditionally associated with liberalism, the most liberal Democrats actually expressed the greatest dehumanization of Republicans. This suggests that political ideology can at times be as much an expression of social identity as a reflection of deliberative policy considerations. Oh, you don't say. You don't say that the left is really in the business of dehumanization. But I think importantly, and perhaps conservatives don't discuss this enough to understand the appeal that needs to be made and understand the enemy they're dealing with. The enemy, and the Marxist, the cultural Marxist, the new Marxist, this is their identity. It's not just policy preferences. I mean, they're identitarians. Understand that it's not just their non-behavioral characteristics. It's also their philosophy that is part of their identity. And so to disagree with them is to attack their identity. That's how they receive it. Thus, the response is dehumanization of people who have differences of opinion on policy.
Yeah, what's the old saying is that Republicans think Democrats are people with bad ideas, and Democrats think Republicans are bad people who happen to have ideas.
Right.
And it's the dehumanizing aspect of that. I wonder if this is just where it gets people. It almost speaks to kind of a human need to have faith in something larger than yourself. And when you take away God from that, or you don't have kids until you're in your 50s, or this sort of then your faith becomes your politics, and your meaning in life becomes your politics, and you hold it so dear to you that anything that insults it or challenges it, it's like this deep emotional reaction. And we see this all the time. If you've ever gotten to a conversation with a liberal that starts off seemingly pleasant and that you might have a nice debate, and then as soon as you start making sense, they just freak out, go out of the room, all your names. It's very emotional for these people. It's tied to their identity and to their meaning of the world. It's like it's so important to them. And so, of course, everything goes into that, and anyone who disagrees with them is evil in their mind.
He is Chadwick Moore, contributing editor for The Spectator. Chadwick, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
If you have kids in school, then this past year has been a major wake-up call. All of a sudden, many of the things you once took for granted changed overnight. For many students, school is still happening mainly online, and for some school districts, that seems to be the way it'll be for a while. But that's not the case with many private schools. Most private schools have been in classrooms since last August, and students have been receiving a high-quality education from teachers who share your values. Do you want your child to suffer through another year of virtual learning? Now is the time to consider a private school, and the most affordable way to do that is through halfpriceschools.com. Right now, vouchers are available for 50% off the normal tuition for private schools across Chicagoland. Just go to halfpriceschools.com, search for a school near you, and purchase a voucher today. Then, prepare to send your child back to school this fall, in classroom, to a school that you can trust. Visit halfpriceschools.com today.
All right, mypillow.com. That's where you go to find all of your bedding needs. If you need a pillow, if you need Giza Dream Sheets, those are spectacular. But the new My Slippers is where